Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. And actually, I'd like to remind the committee that this party, this side of the aisle, has dedicated tremendous resources to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, the chairman set up a committee called DOGE that the other side of the aisle demonized and criticized in our efforts, in which we had multiple hearings to identify waste, fraud, and abuse throughout all of the government agencies. And so I applaud the chairman and this side for the work that we've been doing. But sadly, Minnesota has become an example because of the extent of the waste and the fraud. I have to ask, it must be embarrassing for the citizens of Minnesota, Chairwoman Robbins.
So I'm not embarrassed to be from Minnesota, but I am frustrated and angry about the theft of taxpayer money.
I have a family that live in Minnesota. It's a wonderful state, and I know that they are angry, that they're very frustrated. So I think that we talk about the amount of money that's being wasted, $9 billion, that seems like an abstract amount, but let's break that down. $9 billion stolen from less than 6 million citizens of Minnesota, correct? That's per individual. Imagine, right? Every citizen of Minnesota, your bank account, suddenly someone took $1,500 out of your bank account. Every taxpayer, there's around 3 million citizens or taxpayers in Minnesota. Every taxpayer just had $3,000 stolen from their bank account. How does that feel to the citizen of Minnesota?
Minnesotans are so frustrated because not only have we had that money stolen from us, but we had an $18 billion surplus that Tim Walz spent and then raised our taxes $11 billion and left us with a $6 billion deficit. So we've had the fiscal mismanagement on top of the fraud, and Minnesotans are completely fed up.
In Missouri, there's also an opportunity cost to all that money. So in Missouri, we just greenlit a project to add more lanes to I-70, which runs from one end of the state to the other, and it was less than $3 billion. You could imagine people in Minnesota could enjoy adding additional lanes on interstates, on 3 of your interstates, I-35, I-94, I-90. Don't you think the people of Minnesota would love to have wider lane or more lanes added to their highway infrastructure?
They absolutely would. But even if we stayed in the social service realm, there was $104 million in 1 year that was fraudulent in the Housing Stabilization Service. If we could have taken that $104 million and put it into supportive housing, we would have done a lot to solve the homelessness problem. So every time these dollars are fraudulently stolen, it is a huge opportunity cost for Minnesotans.
What if you woke up tomorrow, checked your bank account, and $3,000 was just gone? No warning, no explanation, just vanished. Now imagine that happened to every taxpayer in your state. That's not a hypothetical, that's Minnesota. Hook, 020. In a heated congressional hearing, lawmakers laid out a staggering reality. $9 billion wasted, mismanaged, or outright stolen. And the details? They're worse than anyone expected. The discussion opened with a reminder that years were spent trying to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse across government agencies. Entire committees were formed, hearings were held, evidence piled up, and Minnesota became the case study no one wanted, not because of embarrassment, but because of anger. Let's put the numbers into perspective. $9 billion divided among fewer than 6 million people. That's roughly $1,500 per person, or $3,000 per taxpayer. Picture someone reaching directly into your account and taking it. That's how this feels to Minnesotans. And it doesn't stop there. An $18 billion surplus was spent, taxes were raised by $11 billion, and the state was left with a $6 billion deficit. That's not just fraud. That's fiscal chaos. Here's what makes this sting even more. Other states are using less money to build real infrastructure, expanding highways, fixing congestion, improving daily life. With a fraction of those lost funds, Minnesota could have expanded major interstates like I-35, I-94, and I-90. More lanes, less traffic, real results. Instead, the money disappeared. One example alone, $104 million fraudulently taken from a housing stabilization program in a single year. That money could have gone directly into supportive housing. It could have made a measurable dent in homelessness. Every stolen dollar isn't just theft, it's a lost solution. Call to
Absolutely. And you've been sounding the alarm for quite some time. Why has it taken until 2025 for these to fully come to light?
The Fraud Prevention and State Oversight Committee was formed in 2025 once we had a tie in the House.
So when you guys, the Republicans took majority, you finally, or you were able to actually root out the waste, fraud, and abuse in Minnesota, which is why we now know about it.
Yes, we're in a tie technically, but we were able to negotiate this as part of the power sharing agreement.
I seek unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter into the record a article from the New York Post. Former Homeland Security agent claims prosecutors ignored Minnesota daycare fraud cases. They just evaporated.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. So there's been investigations been going on for some time. I understand you don't report them, or have really kind of bypassed the state agencies. You report directly to the federal government. Can you elaborate on why that is? It's pretty obvious why, but.
So when my staff, we have a very small staff. We have one researcher on our committee, and then we as members also do a lot of our own research. And when we get an investigation that is credible, we do as much research as we can. But as I said earlier, we don't have access to bank records, health records, or the state payment system. And so based on that, when we get something that's credible, we turn it over to the Office of Legislative Auditor and to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I have been accused of hiding whistleblower data from the department, but when the department comes to hearings, we provide documents every time. I flagged 72 child care centers. We've given them lists of all of the housing, multiple addresses where there's more than 5 providers, sometimes up to 22 providers at the same address. They've done nothing with it. But what I don't give them is the whistleblower information, because I'm protecting our whistleblowers in Minnesota. They finally are stepping up, and I have their back.
Good for you, and I appreciate you for doing that. And then finally, with that, I'll end. I have more articles to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to submit them now, or are you going to submit them? Okay, go, proceed.
Okay, one is an article produced about child care welfare fraud.
Without objection, to ordered.
A report produced by the Office of Legislative Auditor of Minnesota, Child Care Assistance Programs Assessment of Fraud Allegations.
Without objection, to ordered.
And then from the Minnesota House Research Group, the Child Care Assistance Programs and the Fraud Within.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is very important that we eliminate fraud in our social programs, and I'm glad that Governor Walz has taken real concrete steps in Minnesota to combat fraud, like signing legislation to strengthen states' agencies' ability to detect, prevent, and prosecute fraud.
Matter, hit the subscribe button right now. This channel breaks down the stories others won't, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. So why did this take until 2025 to fully come to light? Because real oversight didn't begin until power dynamics changed. A fraud prevention and state oversight committee was finally formed. Investigations gained teeth, and suddenly records started surfacing. Not rumors, receipts. Here's where it gets darker. Dozens of child care centers flagged, multiple providers registered at the same addresses, sometimes 22 at one location. Evidence handed over again and again, and yet nothing happened. Why? Because whistleblowers needed protection. And without it, the system stayed silent, so evidence was sent directly to federal authorities, not buried, not ignored, protected. Articles entered into the record. Auditor reports confirmed fraud allegations. Research groups documented systemic abuse. This wasn't speculation. It was documented reality. Then came the political spin, claims of action, claims of reform, claims that steps were already being taken. But for taxpayers watching this unfold, one question remains.
Why did it take this long?
This story isn't about red or blue, it's about accountability. It's about billions of dollars that could have fixed roads, housed families, and lowered taxes gone. And now that the curtain's been pulled back, the only question left is, what happens next? Stay informed, stay sharp, and stay subscribed.